OfficeUS. So the Pavilion is both the past and present, the history and the future of US offices and how they practice. And it's built as a repository of the last 100 years of US architects building abroad and a collection of the projects that they've built outside of the US. So we have historical information through a series of binders, a library that we call the repository that appears throughout the space of the Pavilion to tell the stories of US offices that built abroad and the projects that they produced. The library is set in relation to a continuous table that also runs through the entire Pavilion that houses a new office which we're creating for the 6 months of the exhibition, which is populated by a series of partners. There are 8 partners who are members of OfficeUS as a new office that's being created in this lineage. And so the library is there to give them the history of a series of practices and their international work as a series of stories about professionalization and its international consequences, and how U.S. architects have both shaped and been shaped by that kind of international exchange. The U.S. Pavilion itself, as a project from 1929-1930, is one of the projects that's included in the repository, and so the specific story of that has also been put on display for the partners. The partners will be engaging with the content that's on the wall through a series of 25 issues that are tagged to certain projects, out of which the hope is to produce a discussion that the partners will be able to take on every week. The partners will be taking on one of these issues, developing it through the history of projects that are on display, but also in relation to their own work, as a speculation on the future of practice and the future of these kinds of international exchanges and the ways in which they and other architects have participated.
And you cover more than 100 years with the project in folders that people can look at inside the folders, so it is even a kind of archive of all the projects made by the architects
We'll probably bring it out for you.
inside.
Yes, the repository is intended to be an archive of U.S. architects and their work. It's based on a much larger set of projects that we were looking at. We were looking at something like 2,300 projects, which we then culled down, curated a selection that is intended to be a substantial archive of architectural description of offices and how they practice, and also a press archive on offices and their work. That's all available for the partners. So it's intended to function as an office library, really, for the partners to use, as well as an archive for the public to access the last 100 years and actually history before and after those 100 years of U.S. offices and their international work.
Are there some projects that are much more important than others, or some parts of the world much more involved in these projects made by American architects abroad?
There are.
Please. Thank you.
So there are certainly projects that were more or less important in particular historical moments, or produced a certain effect that's still being dealt with today. For example, the Guggenheim in Bilbao, in relation to the Bilbao effect. And you see it tracked through the 100 years that the particular geographies in which building practice is taking place very heavily, or the particular building types or kinds of projects that become very prominent in certain moments, shifts as you move through the 100 years, from China and Japan in the early part of the 20th century to Venezuela and Colombia as a major foreign source of U.S. oil in the 1930s and 40s, into the Middle East in the 1960s and 70s, and then into the more eclectic geographical distribution of projects in the present.
Thank you.